Anthropological Airwaves is the official podcast of the journal American Anthropologist, whose main offices are located on the traditional and ancestral territories of the Nacotchunk, Anacostia, and Piscataway peoples. The Anacostia and Potomac rivers have long been places of trade and gathering for Indigenous peoples, and Washington, D.C. is now home to diverse Indigenous peoples from across Turtle Island. American Anthropologist has published material throughout its history that has taken knowledge from Indigenous peoples for a scholarly audience and has not required its authors or editors to be good relations to Indigenous peoples and communities. Acknowledging territory is only one step in repairing these relationships. The editorial collective of the journal is committed to deep listening and engagement with Indigenous scholars, peoples, and communities to explore ways to be a better relation. Today's recording is the second in a three-part episode that was produced on the traditional territories of Indigenous peoples across Turtle Island. The interview portion of this episode was recorded on the occupied ancestral lands of the Narragansett and Tongva peoples. The Narragansett peoples are the original inhabitants of the land now known as Rhode Island. They have stewarded this land since time immemorial and continue to do so today. The Tongva people ruled the unceded territory that is now known as Southern California for many millennia. Their descendants remain the stewards of these lands. The episode was edited and produced on Narragansett lands. Parts of this episode, including this recording, were also produced from the traditional territories of the Catawba, Waxhaw, Chera, and Sugary peoples. While many descendants of the Chera, Waxhaw, and Sugary communities eventually joined the Catawba peoples, today the Catawba Nation continues to thrive in what is now called Rock Hill, South Carolina. Hi everyone, thanks for joining us for another episode of Anthropological Airwaves, the official podcast of the journal American Anthropologist. This is Season 4, Episode 1, Part 2. My name is Anar Parikh. I'm a PhD candidate in anthropology at Brown University. Some of you might already recognize me and my voice, but in case we haven't had a chance to be acquainted yet, I'm the associate editor of the podcast at American Anthropologist and the executive producer of this show. I use she, her pronouns. You're listening to the second installment of a three-part series titled I'm Indigenous, Not Mestizo, the art and activism of rapper Jaguar Arriola, produced by Ben Salinas and Adelaida Tamayo, PhD students in the Department of Anthropology at Brown University. Originally submitted as a collaborative multimodal final project for a graduate seminar on violence, governance, and transnationalism, we're bringing you their work in podcast form with some minor modifications. In Part 1, which you can revisit for some additional background information about the project, they prepared for their interview with Jaguar Arriola, an Indigenous Chicano musician based in Los Angeles, California. Today, we're sharing the interview itself. Together, Ben, Adelaida, and Jaguar discuss a number of topics, including identity, activism, and solidarity. The interview is really the star of today's show, so I won't take up too much of your listening time. But just so you know what you're listening to, we're dropping this series in your podcast feeds over the course of a week. Part 1, which went live on Monday, is already available for listening. Today's episode is Part 2, the interview. Part 3, a follow-up conversation between Ben and Adelaida, will be available to listeners on Friday, February 25th. If you're tuning in as these episodes drop, make sure you come back for the final installment in a couple of days. If you're tuning in from the future, feel free to listen to the episodes in order or hop around based on what suits your listening interests.
You ready?
Yeah.
Let's do it. How y'all doing? Thank you for having me.
Hey, welcome. Thanks for joining.
Of course. Thank you both for reaching out and for your patience and your labor. You go ahead and start.
Yeah, totally. So I think you've talked to Ben before. My name is Adelaida. I'm also studying anthropology, and I just recently started listening to your music. I love what I hear. I love the radical, revolutionary vibe, and I would love to hear just a bit about your journey to rap. What brought you to the genre? and what brought you to mobilizing kind of your revolutionary ideas through the genre.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, cool. Well, thank you for the question. So, first, for the audience or the public that may be listening to this, my name is Jaguar Arriola. I'm a hip hop artist, and I'm one half of the hip hop duo called Cosmic Force, and with my brother Native Threat. But what brought me to journey of rap, or just even being introduced to the genre, I think maybe about 10 or 11 years old. I had heard hip hop before, but when I really got synced in, like to the point where I had an identity with music, it was around when I was 10 or 11. I don't come from an English speaking home, and most of the hip hop I did grow up listening to was hip hop that's in English, But as you all know, probably hip hop is in Arabic now. There's people that rap it in indigenous languages. It's worldwide. It's a global genre, movement, culture. But what I was hearing was what was from the so-called United States. So I was around 10 or 11, and my mother worked at a fast food spot in my neighborhood, and she's been there for a very long time. And one time, she had this really old car, and she struggled with it. It was kind of like one of those cars that it wouldn't turn on often. It wasn't reliable. And one day her car got stolen from the parking lot of where she worked. And we kind of were aware that the people who stole it weren't going to get too far because the car wasn't reliable, like at all. And it literally left them, I want to say maybe like 3 miles up the street, down the street. So when we found the car, there was like a bundle of CDs in there, like a full case of CDs back when, people used to listen to CDs. And they had like a Tupac, All Eyes on Me. It had a bunch of burned CDs that had like with permanent marker. It just kind of said like the names of, it said DMX. I know there was a DMX one in there. Rest in peace, DMX. Rest in peace, Tupac as well. But the one that really kind of like put me on was, Easy Does It. NWA, Eazy-E. From around the way, born in 73. Hardcore B-boy named Eazy-E. It's 88 now, 73's obsolete. A nigga with a serious ass attitude in 100% street. And I kind of got the experience of a real hip hop rap CD, right? It's a whole compilation where there's interludes in between. There's like samples in between of like, the rappers just kind of hanging out, bullshitting, whatever. And excuse me, is it okay if I cuss?
Totally Absolutely. Fine. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. So, that really, it kind of just put me up on game, but something gravitated me towards that over any other genre, because I was exposed to other genres. My older brother is a skateboarder. He was a professional skateboarder at one point, and he liked a different kind of genre. I guess it would be like more on the alternative rock side. My mom likes like romanticas, just some of it very soft, some of it very more lively, I guess. So this is how important music is and art. It's timeless, like it truly changed my life. Just ending up with an Eazy-E CD in my hands, and the circumstance that it happened, it just ended up being there because the people who stole my mom's car, they forgot it there, but yeah, I mean, it was that's how I kind of got into the genre, as the years progressed, I was introduced to many other artists, rappers that influenced me, the ones that influenced me in the more revolutionary, political, socially conscious way was, my favorite hip hop artist is a brother named Immortal Technique. I like him a lot. I like a brother that's part of his camp. His name is CF, Constant Flow. He's from Jersey City, New Jersey, Puerto Rican brother. And, it's just been a lot since then. I listen to a lot of different rappers. Some of them are politically conscious. Some of them just tell stories. Some of it is fun music just for a vibe. But that's the genre I like, So I hope I answered your question to a certain degree.
When did you start actually rapping, like, and making your own music, and like not just listening to it?
January 2016 is when I started my first, when I recorded my first song, and it was a song titled "Spar Like a Jaguar."
When you hear a whisper in the wind, spar like a jaguar in its motherfucking skin, I'm masked.
And that song, it was already released and things like that, but you know, that was the first track I ever recorded. I remember like in 2015, I was deep into hip hop. Like I'm talking like that was like my religion. It still is my culture. I just go to hip hop shows all the time with my partner, and you know, just seeing, you know, different MCs perform live. It's just like, man, like I'm like, yo, like I want to do that. I can do that. You know, I have a lot of rhymes written, but I've never recorded in a studio. I don't even know how would I would go about that process. So, you know, I hung out with, I had some homeboys and homegirls, and whenever they throw parties or kickbacks, you know, uh, some of my people, they would, you know, gather in the back, and we'd just have a little cipher, right, a little circle, and I would attempt to rap, you know, and some of them were like, damn, like, you know, mind you, these are my people from my community who aren't really aware of like social justice, nothing, none of the shit I'm into, to be honest, you know. They just live their life and kind of, they're just like, they're like, yeah, fuck the government, but that's as far as it goes, right? Or yeah, fuck the cops, you know, fuck racism, but you know, like that's it, nothing, you know, beyond that. And you know, I was already deep into, you know, learning about lectures from different Black Power scholars. Like, you know, I learned about Dr. Khalid Muhammad, Minister Louis Farrakhan, and there was a lot of Black empowerment teachers that I learned from. You know, before my own, you know, as a non-Black person, me, you know, a person who's indigenous, who's Native. But I gotta give credit to, you know, I've been involved in hip hop since, you know, middle of 2014 through an organization, a global organization called Guerrilla Republic. It's a hip hop organization. Every corner of the planet, Bulgaria, Mexico, Guatemala, Ecuador, you know, different reservations in the United States. These people helped me push that song. You know, these comrades, these relatives. My brother Is the Truth. He's you know, one of the founders of Guerrilla Republic Hip Hop. He actually helped me push the song, and you know, I believe that's one of the reasons it might have got so many plays early on. But you know, right away I got like, that's very motivating. You know, your first track, you're getting love, people are like posting it, whatever. To anybody listening, you know, if you want to do anything, karate, soccer, hip hop, whatever, only painting, whatever you want to do, there's only one way to go when you start at the bottom. But you gotta, you know, work on that craft and respect the craft, and because it's not a game, it's a culture. And you know, I don't appropriate, I appreciate. So I had to come correct. You know, if I join a kung fu dojo down the street, I'm not gonna quit the next day. I'm gonna keep going, and I'm gonna respect the craft because that's someone's culture from Asia. You know, hip hop is Black culture. Hip hop is, you know, it comes from the African American experience. You know, so me as a non-Black person, as an indigenous person, Native, you know, I celebrate my Black relatives and, you know, the art that they gave the world that I'm blessed enough to be able to participate in. So shout out to my brother DBZ Swaby for, you know, allowing me to go use the microphone. It was in his bedroom, you know, and you know, for kind of just believing in me, man, being like, yo, yeah, do it, bro. Like shit, like, you know, if you don't do it today, when are you gonna do it? And it's just like that, right? And oftentimes I get hit up by artists or people who wanna, you know, get into hip hop, and they say, yo, how do I do this? I say, look, go on Craigslist right now. If you're ready, if you have your rhymes and your beat ready, you could find one on YouTube. Again, just rip it off, steal it. Some of them are free. It literally says free beats on YouTube, right? Just use it, download it, whatever. Find a home studio on Craigslist in your neighborhood and go pay. You'll probably pay like $25 if that's accessible to you, $30 for like a 1 hour session for you to record. Tell the engineer there that it's your first time. Hopefully they're nice, and you know, they're supportive, you know, but they might not be, but you know, but you got to be ready for that, because man, hip hop, you know, you get called, people say you're whack, you know, people say you're, you know, that you can't rap, you know, or whatever. So you got to have thick skin and just keep it pushing, because I've been told many times that I've been told by a lot of people that they love my music, and I've been told by people say, oh, you might want to do something else, whatever. So you just got to keep it moving, It's like anything. Like if I paint, or if I sing or I dance, someone might not be feeling it as much as others, right? So you gotta be ready for that, criticism, and just come stronger, work on it, work on the craft. And that's what I did. I made it an effort to, because I was so into going to hip hop shows live, seeing Immortal Technique live, Chino XL, Sick Jackin from the Psycho Realm, like outstanding entertainers, yo. Like I pictured it like a stadium, like when my ancestors, our ancestors, had people would recite poetry in front of an audience. The way these MCs move the crowd, and they're so humble and shake everyone's hand. They're not commercial. They don't show up with security guards. They literally pull up, get off their tour bus, and like go holler. They'll go hang out with you at the merch booth for a while. They're people artists, because hip hop is underground, is grassroots. Definitely performing live just kind of like it just gave me a stronger, more confidence. Like more confidence even when I recorded in the studio, because now I understand, I get it that I can do this. If I could do this live, I could do this in the booth, right? I mean, with no one around me, just myself. So yeah, I hope that kind of answered that.
Yeah, totally. And I like what you said about keeping it moving, because that's so important in any art form, even in like as a student, you have to kind of keep doing things.
Yeah, absolutely.
I wanted to ask you, I really got excited about your name when Ben told me about your name.
Okay.
Because I don't know if you've heard, I mean, I'm sure you've thought about this stuff, but I don't know if you've heard of, there's these two jaguars that keep crossing through the Mexico-US border, and like the authorities, they can't stop them. The US really wants to stop them from coming in the US, but they can't stop them because obviously they don't respect borders. Anyway, since I heard about that, I love jaguars, and just wondering if you like, what led to your name? Like, was it a similar kind of?
Right. Yeah. Oh, thank you. I appreciate you sharing that. So the name Jaguar, the way it came about was, I I love history. I like to study history. Like I said, I originally started learning about, Black history. A lot of Black history studying. Because, I live in the United States, right? The so-called colonial Republic of the United States, and this is, my experience, and also being a big supporter of hip hop music, which, Black people created. Like I said, I learned from a lot of Black scholars before I learned about my own history first. And learning about history, once I started getting into my people's history, my culture, my background, my origins, my ancestry, my lineage, etc., I came to the understanding that the jaguar is indigenous to the Americas. So our four-legged relative, spotted cat, that animal, that relative, is indigenous to this continent, right? So you can find the jaguar in North America, Central America, and South America, and nowhere else on the planet. Okay, so that's real special to me, and not just the jaguar. There's others. You got the coyote, you got the condor, few others, right? But the jaguar, it just, as I did my research and learned, the little Mesoamerican history that I know, I came to the understanding that a lot of nations, a lot of indigenous, pre-Hispanic, pre-colonial nations in Mesoamerica were, revered the jaguar in some way, shape, or form, especially the ancient cultures. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Yeah, so I came to the understanding that the jaguar is, very sacred among. I actually have a Jaguars hat on right now. It's the NFL team, but I wear it to represent our people, our lineage. But whether it was the Toltec, the Olmec, different indigenous ancient societies from Mesoamerica revered the jaguar. So I was like, okay, if I'm gonna give myself a name, I'm gonna just roll with jaguar, because that's something that, like, I want to represent my people in this genre, in this culture, in this music. How can I represent my people without just appointing myself a very Mexican centric name? I didn't want to do a Mexican centric name because I represent more than the people of Mexico. Those are my people, but I also represent people from Ecuador, El Salvador, Nicaragua, Honduras, Panama, Belize, Argentina, Chile, the entire Caribbean, La República Dominicana, Cuba, right? And so-called Canada, my indigenous First Nations people from Canada, first people of the United States, quote unquote. I say quote unquote a lot whenever I, talk about colonial republics. That's special to me, the same way I might talk about corn in my music. Corn is indigenous to our continent. Potatoes, right? Our people have given a lot to the world. The abacus, the concept of zero, Mayan ancestors, right? Gum, we invented gum too, right? A lot of things. So, hopefully I can, people from outside of our community can, learn about us and, um, learn that, in the new world, as they call it, right? As the colonizers called it, lived a very sacred people, that we lived in harmony, and we, with the environment, with Earth Mother, and we weren't these quote unquote savage, quote unquote primitive people that were talked about in journals that got sent back to Europe, right? When colonizers came over here. Yeah, it's that's Jaguar, want to represent, the continent, Turtle Island, Abya Yala, North, Central, and South America, because we're the same people. We just, if the southern colonial border got moved up a few miles, indigenous people of Texas would be called Latinos or Hispanics today, right? So, colonial borders are European. They weren't here. We're older than those borders. We're older than the Bible. We're older than, any cross, anything that's came to our lands after we had already built our civilizations and, our communities. Even our very nomadic societies were very organized, very what is it? Very organized and, autonomous, autonomous. So yeah, that's the background of where I got the name Jaguar from.
So we have this question here is like basically kind of both of us are interested in like how our scholarship and how basically everyone can kind of make the world a less shitty place, in combating racism, which is like, and every type of oppression, which is kind of why we were drawn to you. So like,
yeah,
you believe in like a utopia, crees en la utopia, like, and if so, like, how can your music be part of that? How can your music help us reach that?
So as far as believing in a utopia, I do believe that another life is possible. I do believe that, capitalism has only existed for so long, right?
Yeah.
There was a time before capitalism, right? Before the transatlantic slave trade, that was the root or origin of capitalism and the exploitation of Earth Mother in the New World, right? In the Americas, that began capitalism, and that's the root of basically, the destruction of Earth Mother, the destruction of all non-human life as well, is from capitalism, white supremacists, patriarchy, heteropatriarchy, all that, right? But as far as a perfect world, we can try to live a better life. It is possible. We saw an example in Cuba, with the Cuban Revolution. People die of old age in Cuba. They live very long lives. That can't be said here in the United States. This is the first world, right? The champions of the first world. But I was doing some mutual aid yesterday with my partner, right? We were distributing lunches to the houseless relatives without shelter, homeless relatives, and it just, we are very humbled, with when we do mutual aid, but we're very saddened that this system leaves people houseless, right? Leaves people without shelter, leaves people without essentials, food, clothing, shelter. We need that. That should be guaranteed, right? Homeless people didn't exist before 1492 on our continent, so that came with white supremacy, that came with European colonization, settlement. So I do think that another world is possible, and I do think that it's not gonna be on paper, right? I can't put it on paper. I'm not familiar with theory like that, but I don't have to be, right, to imagine it. There's examples of the Cuban Revolution, you got the Zapatistas, but we definitely will need, a unity, intercontinental unity between different leaderships, because we are in an era of imperialism. So I can be an anarchist all I want, right? And let's say we got a strong community of anarchists, and where I'm at, and we're ready for anything. But at any point, the imperialists can blow us up, right? So we need support. We will need a warrior society, right? We will need people that can protect us. We need to have weapons, because we're in an era of imperialism, right? Where they've set up a monopoly on everything. They're gonna set up embargoes. They're gonna, if people were to try to push some kind of revolt in this country, you're gonna be met with some serious opposition. And I tell people, I tell the conservatives, I tell the Democrats, I tell the Republicans, if you were to try to get some real revolution here, like a real constructive change to the system, guess who would be the first people to shoot you? The police. The police are going to be there to defend the government. They're going to, if you do get through them, guess who's going to be next? The U.S. Marines, the U.S. Navy, the U.S. Army, all those guys. That all their colonial forces are going to be the next to shoot the people. So they're not here to protect the people. They're actually here to protect the corporation, which is the United States. They're here to protect the colony, the empire, right? Neo-Rome, I call it in one of my recent songs. Song's called Fuerza Guerrera 2.
Of a false neo-Rome, this country's terrorists are white and homegrown. Grab a couple magazines, trouble with these MAGA freaks, yeah, I see.
This is neo-Rome, only America's not as strong as Rome, because Rome conquered people, and they let them know that, that other people lost because they were weaker in conflict, but America is is bases their oppression on race. Romans conquered other white people. Romans, they fought each other, right? White people versus white people. The same way some indigenous nations had a conflict with others, right? Africa, Asia, etc. However, it got ugly 500 years ago in 1492, right? When they began to justify the genocide with race, right? With phenotype, with eugenics, shit like that. So that's when it got, we turned, a new world happened, right? Something new happened. But there's definitely a possibility of another world, and it takes people, banding together. It takes people, being tolerant with one another, being patient, but at the same time getting shit done. Mutual aid, solidarity work, and diversity of tactics. Right? We can do both. I can say free Palestine while still saying remove the United States empire from Turtle Island, right? I can walk and chew gum at the same time. I can support Black Lives Matter. I can stand in solidarity with my Asian relatives, because we need a global unity, right? We need union among all oppressed people, because we're all under the colonial boot, including a lot of white relatives too. European Americans, a lot of them don't realize it, but a lot of them are also, they're also oppressed by the ruling class, the elite class, right? So we need everybody on the same page so that we can win. Unfortunately, in the United States, it looks a little bit kind of hard because of the race thing, right? Racism is it's just like a nasty, a gash. It's not a small paper cut. It's a gash, and it's bleeding out. Brother Malcolm X said that a long time ago. And the problem is, America won't even acknowledge that it's there, right? And fucking acknowledgement, fix it, And I don't expect the system to ever fix itself. So, which is why I tell people, you gotta do things your own way. You gotta take your freedom. No one's gonna give it to you, especially not these nonprofits. You know what I'm saying? Nonprofits create employees. They don't create revolutionaries. Revolutionaries come from the grassroots. Collectives, mutual aid. But as far as my music, I'm gonna provide social commentary on it. The same way people are writing books. Same way are people writing books about the times right now. Some people are painting pictures. Some people are creating murals about the circumstance that we're living in, right? And Neo-Rome, this colonial republic, people paint pictures, people sing, people dance, people tattoo, whatever. Y'all are doing your work, whether it's interviews or journalism, but you're partaking into documenting this, and so that people can hear it, hear different perspectives, and and ultimately support the revolution, because we need people documenting, right? You know, I want to tell my story. I don't want the white man to tell a story for me. You know, I don't want to die and have a white guy write my book and say, okay, here's who he was. Woo woo. Nah, I'm gonna tell my own story, and we all have control of that with this computer that we carry in our pockets, right? We post on our Instagram or on Facebook. That's like a journal, right? We're telling our own story. So you know, I appreciate what y'all are doing, because you know it's diversity of tactics, right? We all participate in some way, shape, or form. Some people are slicing the tires on the ICE vans right now, so that ICE doesn't go deport some people to the border, right? And that's solidarity right there. We need that direct action. You know what I'm saying? We need that shit. We don't need people just standing on the sidewalk holding signs with a city permit to do a protest. You know, we need people to take the fucking street without the permission of the city. You know, we need people to block the freeway so that the money gets stopped that day. You know, unfortunately, people are not going to go to work, but that is a sacrifice. It's a revolution. You know, it's tactics, right? We need people feeding our homeless, shelterless relatives. We need people doing journalism, doing radio shows, these underground radio shows. We need people entertaining people too, right? Because it's not just you know, I'm not just bumping revolutionary hip hop every day. I'm not, you know, if I'm on my way to the club, I'm gonna be probably listening to something that for a vibe, right, to have a good time. So, you know, we're multi-dimensional beings. You know, we're not just, oh, we're just gonna fight the system every day, all day. Yeah, we do that, but we also take time for ourselves. We also, you know, again, diversity of tactics. You know what I'm saying? So, burnout is real. So, you know, I salute anyone on the grounds doing any kind of work. You know, but again, my music is gonna be social commentary to that. I'm gonna, you know, my music has evolved from just being like pro-indigenous, super like about my people, my culture, my empowerment, to solidarity with all oppressed people all over the world under the colonial boot of imperialism, of capitalism, of white supremacy, you know. And it's going to be historical, you know, to remind people that they try to write us out the history books, right, by relabeling us Latinos, Hispanics, mestizos. But, you know, we're here before them. Just because I became half white, became a so-called mestizo, you know, being you know, that doesn't mean I'm all of a sudden not indigenous anymore. I'm not half an eagle. I'm a full bird. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
For sure. Thank you. That covers so much of what we've been talking about in class, and that I feel like the things that you're saying is just so much more powerful to have a video of somebody talking about it than us like writing these essays over and over again. So it's awesome just to hear all of this and have a video of it.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I appreciate the feedback for sure.
Yeah.
I
mean, the last question.
Yeah. Kind of just on this like note of diversity of tactics, like we are constantly trying to figure out what we as university students coming in this, like we have a position of privilege. We go to a rich university founded on slavery, like built by slaves on slave land. You know, we make money off of like we're anthropologists, you know, we tell people stories and we try to do that in a way that best benefits people. But, you know, it's about being in touch with those people. So, you know, how can you see us or like scholars and universities in general as supporting these movements? Like, what can we do?
So I would definitely say, thank you for the question. So become familiar, you know, to however you can with the ongoing fights in your areas, right? With the local fights, whether it's supporting Black people on the ground, indigenous people, Asian people, you know, whoever is under the colonial boot that's fighting for some kind of, you know, fight, that's some kind of righteous fight. Monetary donations, right? If you got extra $5, you know, donate to that mutual aid group. You know, again, I would say stay away from the nonprofits. You know, just personally, just from my own experience as well. Like, you know, donate to those mutual aid groups. You can find them always on Instagram. You know, different people share them. Support people who do frontline work. Sometimes, like, I know my sister Kanahus. Her name is Kanahus Manuel on Instagram. I believe she's kanahus.tattoos. She is a frontliner. She is a land defender, water protector for her people. She's Secwepemc. That's an indigenous nation in what is today colonial Canada. And, you know, her people are fighting ski resorts, all kinds of shit. Like they never signed a treaty with the colonial Canadian government. They never signed a treaty with the Queen of England. They're still, that's still their land, and they're building ski resorts. You know, they're just destroying her homelands, and their people are still there. But people, the Canadian government is so invested into claiming that they're very progressive and that racism does not exist in their country, like America. They're like, oh my God, America's so racist. They had Donald Trump. Man, y'all are doing the same shit to indigenous people over there, yo. So I would say become familiar with those fights. Again, monetary donations. If you want to support by having some kind of fundraiser at your campus, creating a club where y'all, become informed. You assign different member of your club to become informed about a specific fight going on, maybe in Canada, maybe in Colombia, maybe in Ecuador, etc. And you can become some kind of vehicle to support those people, and eventually you build trust with the people that are on the ground, maybe in Guatemala, maybe in El Salvador. You say, hey, I'm a student over here. I've gathered these funds. Can I send them to you? You're part of that organization over there. It's grassroots, and that's how you build international solidarity. It don't got to be international. It could be here too. People live in third world conditions here in this country as well. So, I would say definitely the mutual aid groups, the collectives, support anarchists. Definitely support anarchists. They do a lot of work in the community, and it's like super low key. You wouldn't even know who they are. It could be the cashier at your grocery store, but best believe he's probably breaking some pipelines that are going through native lands. At night they do some shit like that. So I would say support the anarchists. There's anarchist pages online. They're grassroots. A lot of anarchists, people have this misconception that it's like some white boy shit. All the anarchists I've ever met, they're all like brown skin like me. I met a lot of black comrades. They got afros. They're anarchists straight up. Like they are not playing. They're tired. They don't want negotiation. They don't want reform. They want abolishment. Abolitionists, support abolitionists, the abolitionist movement. So I would say, communists too. You got a lot of like people of color that are communists. The different routes that people have taken. So I would say support them. And if y'all have access to funds, that the school has, then yeah, I would say donate it to those orgs, and always base it on power dynamics. So like instead of sending, okay, I'm an indigenous man, right? I'm straight, I'm a straight indigenous man. I'm cisgendered. Yes, I'm a person who's under the colonial boot, but my sister could be a trans indigenous woman who could use that support more. So base it off power dynamics, right? Base it off of gender. She could, I could have my queer son or my queer daughter. She was gonna need the financial support more than I do. So, or just base it off that. I would say if someone's homeless, the different disadvantages. That's how you would base that support. If you're gonna create some kind of support team for migrants, that are coming. That maybe there's undocumented relatives living in the city where y'all go to school at. Cool. Maybe y'all can support them. Maybe create like a group that supports them specifically. Sometimes it's important to like, it kind of like helps you stay organized to just pick a cause, like a specific one, like, okay, undocumented relatives, or okay, disadvantaged Black relatives, Asian community, whatever, indigenous community. It could be indigenous to the whole continent, or it could be the specific nation where the land where that school was built on. If you don't have the money from the system, it's going to take grassroots organizing and just basically building. If y'all have skills, share them with the community and fundraise and, things like that. Tattoo fundraisers. I know my sister Kanahu, she does tattoo fundraisers. She's a traditional hand poke tattoo. Her husband's in prison, and we're fighting for his freedom. His name's Orlando Watley, Elkbone. He's been incarcerated over 26 years, crimes he didn't commit. So we're still fighting for him. That's basically my main focus right now. I'm the go-to person with him. Me and my brother Native Threat, we're the go-to people. We're in and out mail with him. He calls me every other day. I put money in my phone so I can accept calls from prison. He's an indigenous prisoner. He's Chickasaw, Native American. So, he's incarcerated, 23-hour lockdown a day, doesn't see the sun, nothing. So it's just, it's torture. So, that's my main focus right now. That's my main fight, just because that's the only one I can commit to right now with, because of my current employment, my job. So it only limits me to fight for something, but, and sometimes, I can only commit to myself, to just surviving. Right. So, I would say be gentle with yourselves, be kind to yourselves, and, make your time for your loved ones, for your romantic partners, if you have one, and still fight the fight, because, regardless, if you don't do it, someone else will. So if I take a break today, someone's still putting in work today as well. You know what I'm saying? So, that's the community, right? That's the no, that's how we rock. We're collective. We build. We eat together, right? It's no individualistic. None of this self-made shit. None of this. I did it on my own. Woo, woo. Nah, hell no. That's that white man mentality, white colonial mentality, European supremacy. Which is not the way our people move. Our people, and even Europeans, man, like Europeans had a very indigenous culture before they got Christianized. They had a responsible relationship with the land before that. They were, quote unquote, pagans. They were uncivilized like us too. But they were introduced to the idea that a Hebrew Messiah died for them and got killed unarmed by the police and crucified, and now they saw people as less because they didn't believe in that. So definitely, white people can decolonize too. White people, I would say, shit, man, like decolonize, unlearn that, and when we say white people, we obviously mean people that practice oppressive behaviors, right? The institutions of white supremacy, the systems that have allowed for us to continue to be oppressed for centuries. It's unfair. So they got work to do. They got work to do for sure. So and I'm in solidarity. With any people, right? Any people that want to get free. Any people that are down for the cause. That aren't prejudiced. And your revolutionary mindset can't be diet either. You can't be diet revolutionary. Oh, okay, fuck racism, but the person is, but they don't support queer relatives. Now, hell no, you got to be intersectional all the way, right? We got to be in solidarity with everyone, trans, queer, First Nations, Black, whatever your background is, Polynesian, poor. Because at the end of the day, our opposition is the ruling class that doesn't care about us at all, right? Doesn't care about the planet, doesn't care that you're going to have you may have grandkids one day and they might not have, clean air to breathe, right? So we got to stay focused, and that's what it is.
Word. Well, thank you so much for joining us. This was inspirational for me. I'm definitely changed, because thank you so much. My family's from Chiapas too. My family came here from Mexico, so I feel you with that.
Okay.
Okay. And yeah, I really appreciate you for coming out to do this with us.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Appreciate it a lot. I appreciate both of you for reaching out and having me for your school assignment. I also went to school. I went to university as well. So I know that journey to a certain degree. So and I wish y'all luck. I know academia, Western academia is very it's very linear, to say the least. So just stay focused and handle your business, do what you got to do so you can do what you want to do, again, so it's Ben, and then relative, what is your first name? Adelaida. Okay, and where is your heritage from?
I'm Colombian. I'm in Bogota.
Oh, Colombiana de Bogota. Okay, cool. All right, well, I appreciate you both. Y'all stay safe. Shout out Chiapas, shout out Bogota, Colombia, Mexico, all oppressed people, right? We're gonna get free together.
So if you disbelieve, but all I know is life is really different. Even when you pass this earth, you ain't gonna never ever leave. Exists in every particle, in every article, regardless, written in the spitting that I breathe. Love, love, love. Connected with the land, where I stand, rattle in hand, with my band, grateful for the day. I heard the wind say, live on another day, live on another day. Connected with the land, where I stand, rattle in hand, with my band, grateful for the day. I heard the wind say, live on another day, live on another day.
Thanks for listening to another episode of Anthropological Airwaves. The final installment of this series will be in your podcast feeds on Friday, February 25th. Many thanks to Jaguar Arriola for his time and insights. This episode was edited and produced by Adelaida Tamayo and Benjamin Salinas. Anar Parikh is the executive producer of Anthropological Airwaves and the associate editor of the podcast at American Anthropologist. This episode features the following music: Easy Does It by Eazy-E, Fuerza Guerrera 2 by Jaguar Arriola and produced by Acosta the Man, and Another Day by Cosmic Force featuring Azamali and produced by Acosta the Man. The background music is made by Benjamin Salinas, and the intro and outro music you hear is titled Waiting by Crowander. As always, a closed caption version of this and every episode of Anthropological Airwaves is available on our YouTube channel, and a full transcription on the episode page on the American Anthropologist website. Links to both are included in the show notes. If you enjoyed this conversation, be sure to subscribe to Anthropological Airwaves wherever you listen to podcasts. And don't forget to rate and review us while you're there. A 5-star review in particular will help other listeners find the show. We would also love to hear from you in general. If you have feedback, recommendations, or thoughts on recent episodes, send an email to amanthpodcast@gmail.com. You can also reach out to us on our Facebook page or on Twitter with the handle @AnthroAirwaves. Find links to all of our contact information in the show notes or on the Anthropological Airwaves section of the American Anthropologist website. See you later!